Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. Common and Chef here with Tom Castleman. We have an awesome show for you guys today. We break down the Jets coaching situation. Robert Saleh is out. What does it mean for Rodgers and the Jets? We have obviously the DC taking over, Nathaniel Hackett demoted. All of it is an absolute mess in New York. Speaking of the Jets, massive Monday Night Football game against the Buffalo Bills. A game that could decide the division. Miami without a quarterback, the Patriots without any sort of offense. This should be a big game when it comes to that AFC East crown. Speaking of big games, Lamar Jackson versus Lamar Jackson 2.0 Jaden Daniels. This young kid is the truth. He is pretty much a carbon copy of Lamar Jackson, Tom Castleman. I'll be talking about that later on in the program. Plus, a fun rematch from last year. I'm going to make a prediction. There will be no big offensive lineman touchdowns that get called back due to penalties in the Lions-Cowboys game. Why is that, Tom? I'm probably giving it away way too early, but it's not even going to be close enough for the Lions to even need to try a trick play like that. Plus, baseball season in full swing. We're getting to the NLCS, the ALCS. Actually, by the time the show is done, we'll see if that Tigers and Guardians game is final, but it's going to be Mets versus the Dodgers and Yankees versus what will be a heavy underdog nonetheless. So we'll be talking about who's going to win the World Series. I did skip ahead to baseball. Let's not forget about college football. One of the biggest games of the college football season today. We got Ohio State versus Oregon, number 2 versus number 3 in the country. It is going to be an epic showdown tonight. Plus, betting locks of the week. Good week last week for the show. Sports trivia, statements of the week, all that and more. I can't wait to get started, Tom. How are you doing on a Saturday afternoon? Question mark. Not our usual showtime, Tom.
Hey, we'll take any time that we can get to talk about a really nice topic of sports, and we'll start with one that, quite frankly, was surprising, not just to us as casual football fans outside of the state of New York, but also surprising to the head coach himself, Robert Saleh, who announced at a team meeting, just to get the timeline on here, announced at a coaches meeting, rather, right after the London game that Nathaniel Hackett was being demoted from his play calling duties as offensive coordinator. And then within a day after that, Saleh himself dismissed as the head coach of the New York Jets operations. So this is something where it's kind of curious. We certainly have a lot of suspicions and a lot of smoke, not necessarily any sort of proof of fire that Aaron Rodgers had something.
Knew. Yes, he
that,
did.
Well, not just that he
I
knew, but that
think.
he actively did something about it because Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett, they go all the way back to the Green Bay days. There was rumors when Nathaniel Hackett was hired to be the head coach for the Denver Broncos that meant that Aaron Rodgers would soon follow him out there. And Rodgers, of course, is saying, "Oh, it's really crazy how much power and influence people think that I have." Well,
Met with the owner the night before the firing, Tom. What do
when
you
you
think
are
they talked about?
exactly like
How's your family, Aaron? No, wait, you don't talk to your family. Never mind. What else could we talk about, right?
perhaps more accurately, his family doesn't talk to him. Distinction kind of
Okay.
important there.
All
But
right.
this
That's
is a
fair.
situation where for we'll put aside the petty dislike that we have for Aaron Rodgers as
I
a
have a
former
lot of
Green Bay
respect for Aaron
quarterback.
Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, Tom.
As a player, yes, as an individual
Yes.
human being,
Maybe not as much,
I not
but go
my
ahead.
cup of tea. I'll put it that
No,
way.
that's fair.
But yes, with Robert Saleh being fired, this is something where the question is posed as is the Jets season pretty much done? They're a mess that are going to miss the playoffs, or are they going to be able to reset? We have seen interim coaches get at least a little bit of that quote unquote dead cat bounce, that little bit of jolt rejuvenation. Something's changed. Everybody is now on top of their respective assignments in a way that perhaps they were before, just because there's a little bit of shock, and that's how we as human beings typically react to these sudden changes. Kind of, where are you leaning on this one? As of right now, the Jets are 2 and 3, second place in the AFC East. I mean, certainly it's early enough on in the season that we can't count in or count out people from the postseason hunt, especially when you look around the league. And 2 and 3 puts you right in the middle of the pack at this point, with plenty of room to improve upon that situation. So this is a fork in the road here. Which way do you see the Jets turning?
Okay, Yogi Berra. That's a Yogi Berra quote. If there's a fork in the road, you take it. So, you know, I know going into the season, there was a lot of talk, like assumptions that we would have at least 2 AFC East playoff teams, possibly 3 fighting for a playoff spot. I think Miami, obviously, with the QB situation, I think they would be in that mix, if Tua were there, but he's not. I think we're not going to have a wild card out of the AFC East. I think this is a division that you probably win 10 games, you probably win the division. What's crazy with this whole Jets situation, if they win on Monday Night Football, they're actually in first place in the AFC East because they would be tied with the Bills and have that head-to-head advantage. This whole Jets situation, so they fire Saleh. They actually escort him out of the building. Don't let him talk to his team, which in itself is a little bit unprofessional, a little bit messy, in my opinion. Nathaniel Hackett stays as the offensive coordinator, but he's demoted from play calls. The offensive play calls going to QB coach Todd Downing, and defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich promoted to head coach. Saleh is a tricky one for me, just because, we talk about this a lot. There's a lot of great defensive coordinators that are not necessarily head coaches. A lot of great offensive coordinators that aren't necessarily head coaches. Robert Saleh is certainly one of the best defensive coaches in the NFL. We saw what we did with the Niners, and Niners are still good, but their defense has lost a half step without Robert Saleh as the DC. The Jets defense obviously has not been the problem the last couple of years. It's been the quarterback spot. Is Robert Saleh a great coach? Is he the right coach? Probably not. Is he better than Jeff Ulbrich? Probably. I mean, for a mid-season, I would have probably let him ride out the whole season personally. And then if you didn't succeed, then you get rid of him then. But I think they have a bigger problem that goes beyond Robert Saleh. And that problem is the assumption was Aaron Rodgers comes to the Jets. They finally got their quarterback. The assumption was they got some guys in the offseason. They finally have an offensive line. The same issues they had last year, they're having right now. They don't have an offensive line. They have talented running back in Breece Hall. He's averaging about 3 yards per carry this year. Less than 4 yards per carry for the season. Actually, his backup, Braylon Allen, has been better than him, but they can't really run the ball much. In Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to be honest with you, Tom Castleman. He's cooked. Is he an upgrade to Zach Wilson? Yeah, who isn't an upgrade to Zach Wilson? He's cooked. We're used to having him have 5, 6 interceptions in a season. He had 3 in the game against the Vikings. One of them, which was a complete overthrow right to the other team. He can't run like he used to. So having this all of a sudden great quarterback, he's not great. He's mediocre without an offensive line. I mean, think about this. A 40-year-old quarterback that can't move without a good offensive line. That sets you up for a lot of bad plays. Now, he has moments. Just like Michael Jordan when he was at the Wizards. He had moments. He can still turn back the clock for a few plays a game. But he has consistency issues, which is normal for a 40-year-old person playing in the National Football League. They're 2-3, Tom, but their wins this year have come against the Tennessee Titans, and they've come against the New England Patriots, 2 of the top 5 worst teams in the NFL. So I think the Jets are in trouble with Saleh or not. Because of how good their defense is, they might win 8 or 9 games. They're like a 500-ish team to me, whether that's 8 games, whether it's 9 games. But certainly with the expectations going in, with the expectations when you bring in Aaron Rodgers, you go 8-9 or 9-8. That's certainly deemed a failure. I mean, I don't think they're a playoff team. I look at the AFC East and I look at Rodgers is still the second best quarterback in the division, by the way. But I look at Rodgers, who's not even close to who he used to be as a quarterback. I look at Drake May or Jacoby Brissett with New England, who have no targets whatsoever, by the way. Then I look at the Dolphins, who without Tua have no semblance of a quarterback. Then I look at the Buffalo Bills, who have Josh Allen, who is, probably the second best quarterback in the league. Obviously Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson in that number 2 hunt behind Mahomes. I do put Allen as my personal number 2. I know he's got some weapon issues himself, but comparing Josh Allen, a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, a rookie quarterback versus a veteran who's never was great to begin with, and then I don't know what the heck the Dolphins, who they're going to throw out at quarterback each week. I mean, yeah, the Jets are in big trouble. They're not going to win the AFC East because, simply put, they don't have the quarterback to win the AFC East, and they don't have the offensive line. I think it'd be easy if they would ask Rodgers to manage the game, but Breece Hall, very talented running back, can't seem to get going. So, again, Salah's all right. I don't think he's the solution or the problem. He's somewhere in the middle for me. I would probably lean they probably should get an offensive coach because they got to figure out that offense. But in the middle of the season, I don't hate the move. I don't love the move, Tom. But I think the Jets have bigger problems than Robert Saleh. And one of the big problems right now, actually, is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, I can go either way on this one too, because with Robert Saleh, of the NFL coaches with 50 or more games under their belt, he had the worst record in the NFL for coaches of a long enough tenure, at least by win percentage, I should say. He had the worst record. This is one where I think I'm leaning that the Jets are more likely a mess than anything else, and that's, I guess, not necessarily to be a surprise. I mean, with Aaron Rodgers, you're going to get at least one thing. You're expecting one thing, which is good quarterback play, but you're also typically going to get him being just kind of a little bit weird. If I'm just going to put one succinct adjective to it, he's just an odd dude. He has been for a while. It's just up to this particular point. His play has been good enough to offset it, and it is a kind of a cruel sense of irony that for the first time he's playing on a team that has a really, really outstanding defense. Green Bay's been able to put together some good defenses for him in the past, but this is the first time that he's playing on a really, really good defense, I think, and actually has like some talent at the receiving position around him. Garrett Wilson, for example, is a really good wide receiver.
The other guys aren't as good as they say, though. Like Allen Lazard is like his 2 or 3.
Yeah, they're fine.
Like Garrett Wilson is pretty good, but this whole idea that the Jets have tons of offensive weapons, I mean, I think they're pretty average. Like Garrett Wilson for a number 1 receiver, Tom, is average. Like he's probably right around like the 15th best in the league. Maybe a little bit better than average.
On production, sure. I think on actual talent, I mean, there are some receivers who are incredible, amazing. They are going to produce and be incredible no matter who their quarterback is. I think that's a fairly short list of wide receivers, though, and I'm perfectly fine saying that Garrett Wilson's a very talented wide receiver who is yet to play with a prime quarterback in his career.
Still, though, like for a number 1 receiver, Tom, he's what, like maybe better than average, but not like a top 5 receiver in the league. And like Mike Williams for a number 2 is like average at best. What'd you say?
Well, I mean, like top 5, you can only have 5 guys there.
Right, but I'm talking about like
if you're short of top
Aaron
5.
Rodgers has great weapons. For a number 1 receiver, Garrett Wilson is a little above average or average. Their number 2 and number 3 guys are about average. Like he's got an above average running back, but I think people are enamored with the Jets' weapons, but I think that are a little overhyped. These Jets weapons they have.
I think that a lot of their players.
Allen Lazard was never very good, Tom, and he's currently the number 2 receiver for the Jets. It should be Mike Williams, but Allen Lazard is the number 2 guy.
He fits a particular role. He's a good comfort blanket for Aaron Rodgers because they have a lot of familiarity going back to Green Bay. I think that this is a team where they haven't really had a whole lot of favors done for themselves. I mean, you look at Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, their yards per carry over the past couple of games. I think Breece Hall, it was over like the last game or maybe the past 2 games, he's had a -7 yards prior to contact, which means that he's not even getting to the line of scrimmage before rushers are stuffing him. Like the offensive line has been, pretty poor. And I think that, Robert Saleh is a fine coach, a very good defensive coach, but they just haven't been able to figure out what to do on offense. And frankly, looking at the track record of Nathaniel Hackett, he has not been the guy to create an answer, to solve an answer. I think that Aaron Rodgers is kind of like Peyton Manning and Adam Gase, if you remember. Adam Gase, everybody thought that Gase was a really good coach. Well, he really was just a proximity hire in terms of he looked good because he was the offensive coordinator for a late prime Peyton Manning with those Denver days. And it was kind of similar with Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers. He goes to Denver as a coach, can't really figure it out, is in New York as the offensive play caller, and they still can't really figure things out on that offense. I think that there's talent, but they haven't been done many favors to accentuate or make the talent better. So I think that probably more likely a mess for the Jets because I'm trying to think like the most succinct way to put it is that they have a bit of a deficit in their coaching staff now, right? Because Robert Saleh out as the head coach, now the defensive coordinator is now the interim head coach. You basically have like everybody moving up a level and quite possibly moving a level beyond what they are prepared to do. I think that's going to be a bit of an issue for the Jets as well. So if I had to lean one way or another, I'd say I would lean toward the Jets being a bit of a mess, hot and cold all the rest of the season. I could see them sneaking into the playoffs pretty easily because currently they're sitting at the 8th spot in the AFC. So they're just one spot out presently. And it's not as if there's some big catastrophic injury. It's a coaching change for this team. So I think that this Jets team, they had an arrow pointing upward, and just a bunch of melodrama has kind of taken them off task, off track. I mean, they have an opportunity to maybe bounce back a little bit against a Bills team that has scuffled over the past couple of games. It feels like the Bills we're still trying to find out exactly how good Buffalo is. We know New England's not particularly great. We know that until Tua comes back, Miami is not going to really be a contending team for a playoff spot. I would argue that perhaps they should have gone out and tried to pry Russell Wilson away from the Pittsburgh Steelers or do some sort of solution, given the talent that team has, get an actual viable starting quarterback. It's fine to have a backup to get you out of a game or two, but when you have to now go multiple weeks without Tua Tagovailoa as a starting quarterback, who I don't necessarily think is like an amazing quarterback.
Led the NFL in passing yards last year.
He is certainly the right quarterback
when he plays, he's
offense
top 10.
And makes that offense hum. Like he does a good job with what he's asked to do and with the weapons around him. You want to talk about good coaching? That's a situation that has good coaching, but even coaching's limited in overcoming that sort of deficit. So I would say, looking at the AFC right now, looking at where the Jets are, I think that they have, again, a chance to sneak into the playoffs. They had a lot of games that they played in a short period of time at the start of the season. So ideally for them, they'll have a bit more pacing toward the back end, ability to be a little bit rested, maybe not quite so harried. But if we look at the teams behind them, Raiders, Dolphins, Colts, those are the only 2-win teams behind them. So I don't think those are teams that are catching the Jets. And that's just a matter of, can they pass up the LA Chargers, the Denver Broncos? I think that's probably an area in which the Jets are. They'd have to, of course, do a little bit extra work to overcome the Broncos due to that head-to-head. But I think the Jets can still be a playoff team. I just don't think that with the way this season has gone, that they can really be, I can really feel bullish about them as AFC East champions. Of course, I mean, just by the pure math, that might change if they end up eking out a win on Monday night against the Bills and controlling the destiny from there, because that is well within a range of outcomes too.
Yeah, we'll get into the Monday night game in a second. I just want to make two final points on the Jets. So first off, Tom, 3 yards per carry is what Breece Hall is averaging this season. 3.6 yards per carry is what they're averaging as a team this season. So that's not cutting it. And secondly, it's one thing, people could say what they want about, Aaron Rodgers calling these shots, calling that shots, but the concept of making your superstar comfortable with the people around him is not a new concept. And it's a concept that does make sense if we're talking about, a 25, a 30-year-old in their prime. We're talking about a 40-year-old
if the person's
Rodgers,
still actually a star. Yeah.
Nathaniel Hackett, like the fact that he has him. Did my mic just get disconnected here? Hold up.
I mean, I can still hear you.
Hold on. There we go. That should be good. My point, Tom, is that you don't do that around a 40-year-old quarterback. I mean, that is hurting their team. That is hurting the New York Jets going to a 40-year-old quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, and giving him what he wants. It's in their advantage to not give him what he wants. That's my take on it. So Yeah, the fact that they made him too comfortable at this age is what's not working for the Jets right now. And I'll
Well,
say
and
they're not. Don't forget the Bengals. You talk about those teams behind them.
Mhm.
I think the Bengals are one game behind them. I'll take the Bengals over the Jets for the playoffs any day, personally, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of season left, and there's also we haven't really addressed this at all. It's not really in the rundown, but there are rumors swirling about Davante Adams really wanting out of Vegas, and of course, a lot of people are going to make connect the dots to Aaron Rodgers, his former quarterback in Green Bay. Are the Jets going to be able to get Davante Adams away from the Raiders because they're certainly not going to deal him within the division? I think ideally they wouldn't want to deal him within conference. But if the Jets are going to say, hey, we're going to fire our head coach to make our quarterback happy, what's spending, a second round pick, for example, to go ahead and get him another receiver with whom he is comfortable? There can
You know
still
where
be some room
Davante
around the
Adams should go
margins.
though? Davante Adams
Hmm.
on this. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix receiver series.
Hmm.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I watched the Netflix receiver series and I walked away liking Amon-Ra St. Brown a lot more than I
Sure.
used to. Debo Samuel, George Kittle,
Hmm.
even Jefferson more than I used to. But those three in particular, you watch that series and you're like, man, love Debo, love Kittle, love Amon-Ra St. Brown, and it made me like Adams less and less.
Hmm.
Like it's kind of like a puff piece, but man, I Devontae Adams is like Aaron Rodgers. They're perfect for each other. There's just something wrong with both of their mindsets. They work well together. But I think Devontae Adams, kind of with the whole situation with Derek Carr, who's not really a great quarterback, but he's your buddy and he gets you the ball. Because Devontae Adams is obsessed with one thing. He could say it's about winning, but it's about Devontae Adams. He wants to go somewhere
Oh,
where we can get the ball. And I know we talk about that's how a lot of receivers are, but just from what I've seen of any receiver in the league, he's the guy that rubs me the most selfish receiver in the NFL compared to all the other guys. Just from watching this insider
hmm.
series, like you could tell that it's about Devontae Adams. He'll say it's about the
Well,
team, it's about him, and that's what I'm saying. It's a bunch of malarkey that he's talking about wanting to win. If he's talking about wanting to win, he wouldn't even be considering the Saints or Jets. The Chiefs' money situation might be a little tough, but if I'm Devontae
yeah, it's
Adams, I'm trying to figure out a way. How can I get to the Bills? How can I get to the Chiefs so I can have Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes as my quarterback as opposed to a mediocre Derek Carr, and at this stage in his career, a mediocre Aaron Rodgers. So if
well,
anyone tells you Devontae Adams wants to win, he's not going to win in either of those places. Devontae Adams wants a guy that's going to target him, and that's why he wants to play with Rodgers and Carr, because those
so
two guys target him more than anybody.
Well, this is a little bit of chicken and egg because this is something that I listened a little bit about earlier in the season for the Chicago Bears in particular, where, oh, is DJ Moore being like a little bit pouty for the Chicago Bears? And the answer is, of course, not. And I believe it was Michael Irvin who was talking about that the wide receiver position is unlike any position in sports because it's the one position where you can be amazing, you can win every single time. And yet, if somebody doesn't do their job to get you the ball, that's not going to help the team win. Like with the wide receiver is the one position where you are reliant on somebody else for your own statistical success. And so if you're an amazing receiver like a Devontae Adams and you're consistently getting open, but the quarterback's not throwing you the ball, sure, you could say, oh, that's selfish. He wants his numbers. But that's also literally what would help the team win as well. So that's why I kind of push back a little bit on the wide receiver narrative of being divas. It's because they're like, hey, I'm out here, I'm doing my job, and you're not getting me the ball. Instead, you throw an incompletion or you take a
I'm
sack or
just saying, I'm
something.
just
That
telling you, if
doesn't help
Devontae
us
Adams
win.
cared about winning, Tom, he'd want to go to a better team. That's all that I'm saying.
I mean,
Devontae
he also
Adams
wants his
cares about
money.
the money. He
Well,
cares
of
about
course.
money and he cares
Who
about
doesn't?
stats. No,
See,
I agree, and that's
yeah,
how a
like,
lot of guys are. I'm just saying, compared to the average player in the league, Devontae Adams
uh,
cares more about stats than almost any player I've seen in NFL history. Just from the vibes I got, Tom. I'm not a mind reader, but just watching that Insider Receiver series, it just seems like it's about Devontae Adams. Like
yeah, okay.
I didn't get that vibe from Justin Jefferson. I didn't get that
Mhm.
vibe from Amon-Ra St. Brown. I get that vibe from Adams more than I get it from Diggs or AJ Brown. Even
Mhm.
Diggs went to the Texans knowing his numbers would get worse because he wants to win. Devontae Adams went to the Raiders because he wanted to get paid. So that's why I'm telling
And he
you
wanted to
this
play with
whole
his college quarterback. Like, there's that
so we
too.
can get stats. The same thing. Cares about stats and money. Does not care about winning.
There's
That's who Devontae Adams is.
there's only one Kansas City Chiefs team, and they only have 53 roster spots. Not
Did you see
everybody can be
Tyreek
on that
Hill
team to
tweeted
win.
old videos of him in his Chiefs highlights?
No, I
Sparking
didn't
a
see
lot of
that.
rumors on Kansas City Chiefs Twitter, Tom.
They have no cap space. Like, there are rules. Anyway,
Rumors.
it's the Jets and the
Rumors.
Bills on Monday Night Football. So, Common, we just talked in length about the New York Jets. We haven't really touched on the Bills overly much, a team that has lost the past couple of games against the Ravens and against the Texans. A bit of a near comeback there that happened, of course, once Nico Collins went out with an injury for the Texans, and the Texans were a little bit shorter
IR.
handed. So he is on the injured reserve list for at least the next 4 weeks. I think he is designated to return at some point with that hamstring injury, but we've now gotten a decent, somewhat decent sense of the Bills to this point, a team that is has been able to beat the teams that they're quote unquote supposed to beat, but have struggled against some of the other top teams in the AFC. Like I said, the Ravens, Texans, two teams that we very much expect to be in the postseason picture. Meanwhile, wins coming against the Cardinals, coming against the Jaguars, and coming against the Dolphins, where first half of the game was 2-2, goes out with the injury, and then the margin just kind of goes from there. So, Common, this is a game where it's a bit of a proving ground for both the Jets and the Bills. What kind of team what kind of teams are these guys going to be going forward? This is in New York on Monday night. The Bills perhaps without James Cook. I don't think he has practiced at all this week. He is officially listed as questionable, but he is certainly one of their top weapons going into this game. So I think whether or not
Plans to
James Cook
play is what now
plans
what
to
he
play,
says. Plans
plans
to
to
play is
play,
the ESPN headline.
that's
Plans to
something that
play.
if you play fantasy or wager or anything like
I have
that,
James Cook on a team.
definitely keep an eye on that 90 minutes prior to the game, because that's when all the inactives will be officially listed. I know he's questionable, plans to play, but certainly that could change right up to the game, as he hasn't practiced at all this week. So that's very much up in the air. So between Jets and Bills, Common, where are you leaning on this one? And is it a strong leaning, or do you think this is one where it could go a little bit either way?
No, I definitely think it's one that could go either way. I just spent all this time, knocking on the New York Jets. But I think, Khalil Shakir is also injured. I'm looking up his injury status. Questionable to play. So he may or may not play. James Cook may or may not play. And if both of those guys play, they both could be not 100%. So again, I think if it was a 100% Buffalo team, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable in picking the Bills. This is at the Jets as well, I believe, Tom. So this is definitely a game that's a toss-up because, like we said, the Jets are really good at defense, and the Buffalo Bills, have Josh Allen, who is Superman, as we've seen, but they're already a little bit short on weapons, and arguably Khalil Shakir and James Cook are the two best playmakers on that team for Josh Allen, and having your top two guys out or playing banged up does hurt you. So this is, I do a confidence thing at work, kind of like the same thing we do for college football. And somehow I'm in first place in our work league. But we rank the games 1 to 14. I think I currently have a 1 on this game, just because of Buffalo's injuries versus a really good Jets defense. But for the sake of making a pick, I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills, and it's going to be because of Josh Allen. Simply put, Aaron Rodgers is struggling. Aaron Rodgers does not look like the quarterback he was. Josh Allen, we've seen, can do it with his arm. He could do it with his legs. He is the best player on that football field Monday night. He is, at this stage in Rodgers' career, the considerably better quarterback. And two teams right now that have played pretty bad the last 2 weeks. Both have lost back-to-back games. Although, again, keep in mind, the Bills lost at Houston, who only has 1 loss this season, and they lost at the Ravens, who are one of the better teams in the league. So it's not like they lost to a bunch of nobodies. Their defense has looked pretty good. I mean, outside of Derrick Henry, they've looked pretty good against just about everybody. So I'm going to lean the Bills because they have the quarterback advantage, but I would feel a lot more comfortable if their number two, their top two targets were a lot more healthy. A massive game though, because if the Jets win this game, they're even in the division. The Jets already have one head-to-head win. If the Bills go up 2 games, 4-2, and the Jets are 2-4, obviously it's way too early in the season to say it's over, but it's almost over. Because then like, the next time they play in Buffalo, and the Jets would have to win that game. Because essentially, if they don't win that game, then they're actually going to be 4 games back in the division. So I think it's going to be a statement game for Josh Allen. A lot of folks after the last 2 weeks have started to back off the Josh Allen MVP train, which we were on a couple of weeks ago. I think we get back on that Josh Allen MVP train. Big performance for him. Big performance for the Bills defense. I like Buffalo in a close game on the road against the Jets.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go opposite of you on this one. I'm going to go with the Jets in a close one at home against the Bills because I do believe in the non-tangible but always narrative storyline of there's a change at the head coach position, a little bit of a boost. I mean, Ahmad Sauce Gardner talking about how Robert Saleh leaving, being dismissed as the head coach, and Gardner saying it's not his fault that we're in this position. I think that there's going to be a little bit, at least on the defensive side of the things, if not on the offense as well, of do this for the old ball coach, so to speak, where the defense, I think, is going to really show up and show out for the Jets. And that might be enough to balance out an offense that's been fairly anemic. You know, we'll also have to see what the difference in play calling is going to be doing for the Jets as well.
That's where I think that might take a week or two. I know you're talking about the emotion of a new coach, but I might argue the opposite. It might take a week or two to get used to the new play calling, personally.
Well, but it could also be
the changing of the play caller. To me, is a big deal here. Besides the head coach.
Well, the changing of the play caller, they're not changing the offense, though. I think what this is actually going to be interesting from a schematic standpoint of what sort of wrinkles do the Jets possibly have at their disposal now. I mean, the only tape that the Bills or any other team has had is of Nathaniel Hackett at play caller. That's not the case anymore. So what's going to be a little bit different? What are going to be the changes in tendency that the Bills might not necessarily have a good beat on, especially early on in the game? This could be one where the Jets get a couple big plays early if they're able to find a couple of mismatches because they have a little bit of a trick or two up their sleeve, but not necessarily trick. But I think a change in tendency, a change in some of the patterns that they have, I think that could be something to keep an eye on. Now, this all may be for naught, of course, but I think that there's just like a little bit of an edge where the Jets, a combination of, hey, we're on offense, so we know where the ball's going to be going. We know where these players are going to be going. Is there perhaps a greater use of Malachi Corley, their second-round draft pick, who's a little bit of a gadgety wide receiver, but he hasn't really been used to this point? Are there going to be maybe a couple of plays with him involved because they put a decent amount of draft capital into him? So clearly they saw something at some point. I'm just saying there's enough variance here that I could see the Jets perhaps pulling off a little bit of an upset at home on Monday night.
Keep in mind, Rodgers is also banged up, took that hit in the Vikings game. 40-year-old getting more and more injured. Another thing that, for me, is why I'm picking the Bills. I don't really buy this whole thing like they're going to have all these crazy plays no one has. I think it's almost crazy. It's going to be almost like a little harder. I think it's going to be the opposite, personally. It's going to be harder for Rodgers to adjust to a different ear in his headset and a little bit different play calling. I think it might take a little bit of time to get used to it. As we know, Aaron Rodgers tends to do really bad week one, and this is kind of his week one with this new OC. I know it's his QB coach. Again, there's a lot more familiarity than there would typically be, but I think it's going to be, for me, growing pains for the offense the first week with the new play call. I don't know if it's going to be the right or wrong move long term. I probably lean the right move because obviously so far all the moves have gone wrong. But I think in the interim, I'm going to go the opposite, devil's advocate, that they take a little bit of time to figure things out. Should be a good game though, but I'm leaning the Bills personally.
Another game where we perhaps might be going opposite as we have a battle for the D.C. metro area. We've got the Washington Commanders, the Baltimore Ravens. The Commanders, a team that, Common, you've been very, very bullish on over the past couple of weeks.
My boys.
Certainly, they've continued to show that,
and one.
They win the games that are in front of them. I think that for me, I'm still not convinced that the Commanders aren't a bit of a pumpkin, looking at the teams that they have played to this point and looking at the style of offense that they have.
Mr.
Uh,
Halloween.
I think that got to be on theme, got to be on brand. So
There we go.
I think that they, I mean, at 4-1, obviously are well within the playoff hunt. But if you look at strength of schedule, point three, a 360 strength of schedule, a 300 strength of victory. So not especially strong when you look at, say, the Minnesota Vikings, who have a 538 strength of schedule and strength of victory. For themselves. So that clearly means that the Commanders are beating up on some of the lesser teams that they've had on their schedule. But the Ravens, not a weak team. I mean, this is a Ravens team that going in, we
You
were
can
like,
only
okay, what are
beat
they
who
going to
you
do?
play.
No, exactly. But that's why I don't necessarily look at the record of what the Commanders have done to this point and say, well, I mean, they're 4-1. They have a better record than the Ravens. I do think that the Ravens are a better team, are a tough matchup because this is going to be a run team that the Commanders have not yet faced. I mean, the Buccaneers not very strong on the ground. The Giants, the Bengals, the Cardinals, the Browns, not particularly strong run games. And I think, and this is of course a multiple a run game where you have Lamar Jackson who can always keep it himself. You've got Derrick Henry, the sledgehammer, Justice Hill, who works as a nice complementary piece in this offense. To say nothing of the dual threat tight ends that haven't necessarily produced, but I think are still a threat. You still have to game plan for Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, and then of course with Zay Flowers on the outside. By the way, you want to talk about a team where Devontae Adams can go put up stats and win? Baltimore could be a really, really good case. I have no idea what their cap situation is, however. But the Commanders have
He's tweeted about that, by the way.
Yeah.
But I actually think it's a bad place for both him and the Ravens because I think they'd almost work too hard to get him the ball. And the Ravens offense has to be simple. Run Derrick Henry, run Lamar, run Hill. That should be the offense, Tom. That might actually hurt them, in my opinion.
He would be pretty easily, I think, the best receiver that Lamar's ever had as a target. So that would be interesting to see. But the Commanders, like I said, I mean, a close win over the Bengals where they simply won a shootout.
28 points and 21 points their last two wins. Bad teams. I get it.
Yes.
If you're winning by 28 and 21 points in the NFL, that's pretty good. I don't see anyone else doing that the last 2 weeks. I don't care who you play. You win by 28 points and 21 points. I know you do, Tom.
Yeah.
And I agree. A schedule is an easy schedule. It's one thing you have an easy schedule like the Seahawks, who are barely beating teams. Then you see now they play good teams, they lose. If you're beating teams by 3 or 4 touchdowns, it is very hard not to take notice, personally, Tom. That's just me.
I mean, you can take notice and you can do a very nice job on teams that are not really that great in the NFL. I mean, those still exist. The Bears have had had a really good game against the Panthers. I don't think anybody's necessarily anointing them as the second coming or anything along those lines. So I think I'm pretty confident with the Ravens in this one. They were able to hold on to another common theme here for the Bengals, a shootout win over the Bengals. They had a massive victory over the Bills.
Won me $1,000.
That Cowboys game was
Parlay.
one where for the first 3 quarters of the game, they absolutely just beat down Dallas. And then at the end, Dallas put up enough points to make it seem closer than that game actually was. I think this is going to go a similar way with the Commanders. This is going to be a test that Jaden Daniels has not to this point in his career seen. And of course, on the defensive side of things, I'm not really convinced that the Commanders' defense is anything special. I think it's fairly, it's middle of the pack, and I think they've proved that to this point. But I think that the Ravens are just going to be too multiple on different aspects of the game, and I think there's going to be a fairly handy victory here for Baltimore.
Yeah, these two teams are almost an identical mirror of each other. It's like you look at the Ravens, and then you look at the NFC version of the Ravens. I mean, It is crazy. Ravens are first in rush yards. Commanders are second. Ravens are 9th in pass yards. Commanders are 14th. Both quarterbacks are amazing at running the ball. Both guys are great at taking care of the ball. Only 3 picks combined between Daniels and Lamar Jackson. Literally, that's what Jaden Daniels is. Great runner like Lamar and really good at completing those short passes. Ravens are 26th in scoring defense. Commanders are 21st. Both teams play great offense. Neither team plays any defense whatsoever. Now, I'm going to lean the Ravens in this game because they are at home and they have the By the way, Baltimore is the number one run defense in the league. Brian Robinson is banged up for Washington. So that's one thing the Ravens do really well. They stop the run really well. And that's what the Commanders, do really well. Although if Jaden Daniels can air it out, Baltimore currently, Tom Castleman, is second to last against the pass in the National Football League. Second to last. So I think this Ravens team has definitely taken a clear step back from last year. And I think their offense is better than it was last year. This is the best Ravens offense we've ever seen. But I think their defense, which was like number one or number two in the NFL last year, is really, really bad this year. It's a really bad defensive team. And if you're playing the National Football League and you are 31st against the pass, you're going to have a rough time being a legitimate contender. So I like the Ravens just because I think, again, their offense is so good at running the ball, and they're actually good at stopping the run, and that's Washington's biggest strength, running the ball. I do think they're going to cover 6.5. The Commanders will. I like them plus 6.5 in this game. I actually like the over as well, over 51.5. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be almost the exact same game that we saw with the Ravens and Bengals, where it's going to be back and forth. Nobody can stop nobody. So the Ravens are interesting, Tom, because again, their offense looks out of this world. Lamar's playing the best he's ever played, Tom. I think Derrick Henry is a dimension they've never had before. But it's like the classic situation with the Chiefs. Yeah, the Chiefs' offense is not what it was the last 2 years, but in some ways, because of how great that defense is, they might be the best overall version of themselves as a complete football team. This Baltimore team has the best offense they've ever had, probably in team history, but it's arguably the worst defense they've ever had. I don't know how this defense got so bad. I know they lost a couple guys, but this defense has taken a massive, massive step back, and we've seen it every week. I mean, people have been able to do whatever the heck they want against them. There's not a single game where they've showed any sort of like, we're going to stop you. I mean, the only way they've stopped people is by forcing turnovers, but as far as going up and down the field, it's kind of like a video game going against their defense. So if I'm a Baltimore fan, I am very, very concerned for the long-term prospects of this team because we know very well you can't just outscore people in the playoffs. They'll make the playoffs. They'll probably win the division. But long-term, I think you're talking a lot about Washington not having a defense. It's the same team. I think that the Washington Commanders are like a slightly worse team of the Baltimore Ravens, but it's a carbon copy right now. These are the exact same two teams. One is in the NFC, one is in the AFC. One has a easier schedule and easier division than the other. Hence why one is 4-1, one is 3-2. But these are very similar teams right now. If somehow Jaden Daniels pulls this off, though, he could be up for MVP. Forget Offensive Rookie of the Year. He could be an MVP candidate. Jaden Daniels, this kid is the truth, man. This kid is the truth. I don't think they're going to lose because he'll be phased. I know there's multiple reports I heard about Jaden Daniels, and these are unconfirmed. I don't know if they're true, but there's a couple of things I heard about him, Tom, that I thought were very interesting. One is that supposedly a rumor out there, emphasis on rumor, but supposedly he's got the NFL schedule maker had a tape to his office because they didn't get enough primetime games. Caleb Williams got more primetime games, not enough love for Washington in primetime. And the other rumor supposedly is that he gets there at 4 a.m. To start working out and doing tape. The man is the hardest working rookie they've seen from what I've heard. And this translates to his teammates. This young kid is just, he's a phenomenon. He really is a phenomenon. So I'm going to pick the Ravens, the home field advantage. Like you said, their running game is too strong, and Washington's running game is going to struggle because of an injury and because Baltimore's actually good at stopping the run. But if Jaden Daniels plays really good passing the ball, I'm going to go 45-55. 45% on Washington, 55 on the Ravens. This game will definitely be a one-score game at the end of the game that could go
Hmm.
either way.
I mean that's a lot of games in the
That's
NFL
a lot of
going
games in the
down.
NFL, unless you're playing the Commanders because they beat you by 2 to 3, 4
Unless
touchdowns.
you're the Cleveland Browns or the
Yeah.
Arizona Cardinals. We've
Right?
got a game that could.
Who just beat the Niners. Just beat the Niners. I'm saying you win by 3 or 4 touchdowns in the NFL. I'm gonna take notice. I don't care who you
Okay.
play. That's impressive, Tom. We don't see that often back-to-back weeks.
I still think they're bad. So a team that also is probably, possibly bad and worse than we even could have imagined. The Dallas Cowboys, a team that you and I both had as wild card teams heading into the season, and currently, as of right now, the Cowboys at 3-2 are right in the thick of that playoff hunt. But they're going up against the Detroit Lions, a team coming off by a team that is humming on a lot of cylinders going forward. Meanwhile, Dallas is kind of limping around. Good chance Micah Parsons is not playing. Lawrence, their defensive end, he's not going to be playing as well. So this is a team where are the Dallas Cowboys not necessarily done, but are they kind of sort of a little bit the Jets of the NFC East?
Not exactly, just because I think, again, they do have a quarterback in Dak Prescott, a young guy who's established there. Micah
Mhm.
Parsons is banged up, he's going to come back, and he's pretty darn good. I wouldn't consider them a mess, but I would consider them, at least when it comes to this game and this season, like they're not a contender, but they're a team that I think should finish, in that hunt for a playoff spot. I think right now, they got to get some new personnel because we talk about in the offseason, they lost a lot of, defensive line guys and they lost a lot of depth on this team, Tom. It's the whole thing like all the superstars are still there, but like there's less and less each year. Remember that Amari Cooper and Zeke in his prime. So I really like the Lions in this game a lot. I think this is
Mhm.
a matchup nightmare for the Dallas Cowboys. Their run defense has been really, really bad. And you mentioned, who can be part of that run defense. I mean, Micah Parsons and Lawrence, and those guys either won't play or will be not playing fully 100%. Well, guess who's going to be playing in this game? Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, the best 1-2 punch in the National Football League, arguably two top 10 running backs in the league with a great offensive line, with a great play caller. I mean, they're just going to wear down the Dallas Cowboys. Of the 3 games we're picking, this is actually a -3 spread. I think this could be a double-digit win for the Lions. I think they're going to
Mm.
hammer, and I do mean hammer, the Dallas Cowboys in this game. It's going to kind of be a revenge game for them in some sorts as well with that game last year. They're also coming off a bye week. Here's a little nugget for you, Tom. You can probably tell that this game will also be featured in Locks of the Week.
Mhm. Mhm.
Under Dan Campbell, the Detroit Lions are 11-3 against the spread coming off a bye week. 11-3 against the spread. So that -3 line looking mighty good.
There you
Dome
go.
game. I don't care if it's a road game, it's a dome game. We know Jared Goff in dome games is a very different quarterback who, by the way, just completed every single pass he threw last game. So uh,
Mhm.
I think this is a matchup nightmare for Dallas. It's going to be an absolute blowout. Dallas has no running game. They have no run defense. I think Detroit's going to have Detroit's secondary is not very good. But if Dallas would be one dimensional, they have one guy with CD Lamb. We're not going to see last year. I think we're going to see some doubles and some triples of CD Lamb. The Lions are going to, figure out what went wrong last year. They're not going to stop him, but he's going to be neutralized, in my opinion. Something I've seen that a lot of teams have started to do that with Dallas. Let's neutralize Lamb. Let's get those doubles, those triples, and let the other guys beat us. And the other guys on that team are not good enough to beat them.
Mhm.
I'll tell you that much. So Detroit big, 10 or more points in this game. Lions win big, Tom.
Yeah, I think I'm also for the Lions winning fairly big. I think touchdown is enough to merit being a big victory, especially in this NFL where, offenses are just too good. I don't think this is going to be necessarily like a two touchdown blowout for the Lions necessarily. I think that the Cowboys with Jalen Tolbert, I think they found somebody as a little bit of a second, viable wide receiver, Jake Ferguson, tight end. I think Dallas will be able to put up enough points to stay in this game and to keep it pretty interesting.
I'm not sure.
I think that if you want to take the Detroit Lions on the spread, on the money line, on the over, I think all those are perfectly fine. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be a complete and total blowout, but this is definitely going to be some interesting territory for the Dallas Cowboys. Like I said, they're 3-2 on the season. They're 3-0 on the road, 0-2 at home. So if they come up with an 0-3 record at home to start the season, can't imagine Jerry Jones is going to feel very happy about that. Not necessarily thinking that any sort of massive major changes are going to be underway. But this is a Dallas team that is really, really banged up, and it's hard for me to see them getting a victory this week against the Detroit Lions. I also like them a lot. They also have a strength on the offensive line that matches up with a current weakness for the Cowboys, simply because, like I said, Lawrence is out, Marshawn Kneeland is out, Micah Parsons is going to be out. I think that this Lions offensive line, they've had a week to get nice and rested up. They're going to come out and just steamroll the Dallas Cowboys. This could be a game where, he might not be perfect, but I could see a fairly low passing volume for Jared Goff. I think he was 18 for 18 or something like that last week in that win against the Seahawks.
Crazy,
I mean,
man.
It could be a very, very similar game here against the Cowboys as well, who, by the way, are without Deron Bland as well in the secondary. I think that they're just going to be able to control the game from start to finish. I think this is one where maybe points on the scoreboard is going to feel a little bit close, but kind of similar to that Ravens Cowboys game. The box score might look close, but the game's not going to feel close very much at all.
I don't think the Lions are a team that gives away a lead. I know they gave it away in the NFC Championship game, of course, but typically they're a team that runs the ball really well. And I think it's going to be a hard team. If they go up 2 scores, it's not going to get close at the end, in my opinion. That's why I look for Detroit to bounce out early and never look back. It'll be a wire-to-wire win. And I feel a lot more confident than you, Tom, in saying that this will be a blowout. I feel very good about 10 or more points in this game.
Yeah, well, there's definitely going to be a lot of points put up in this next matchup. As we shift over to college, you want to talk about a good running game. We got 2 future pros in TreVeyon Henderson and in Quinshon Judkins for the Ohio State Buckeyes, going up against the newly minted Big Ten team, the Oregon Ducks. This is
so weird to say.
And this is 3. I know. I still don't like it. But this is a really big matchup here. I mean, we had a great matchup a couple weeks ago with Georgia and Alabama going up against each other. Now we get the Big Ten version of a team where one of these teams are going to come away with a loss, and it's not really going to matter because they're both going to get in the college football playoff anyway. The stakes are relatively speaking low for this game in the season, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be entertaining.
I mean, Tom, if you lose this game and you lose a second game, there's no guarantee with 2 losses you're in. It's not like this game doesn't matter. I mean, you lose, you still have to be almost perfect the rest of the year.
I mean, this is where I have every bit of faith in the college football committee that they are going to make sure that these teams are in.
Okay.
Because there's merit for 5 spots for winning a power conference. There's going to be a bid for the top non-power 5 team, and then it's all just based on how you're ranked. And I think that there's a very good chance that these teams will be ranked very nicely heading into that last part of the season. This one is in Oregon as as the Ducks are hosting the Buckeyes. Common, who do you like in this one? I know that Ohio State is slightly favored, which is probably a little bit of a wider margin when you consider that it's a 3-point spread favoring Ohio State on the road. So if you want to say, okay, maybe that's closer to like 4.5, 5 if they were the home team. Who are you liking in this game? Do you think it's going to be the Buckeyes defending the old traditional Big Ten, or do you think the newcomers get a little bit of an upstart statement win here?
I think it might be a little bit of a wake-up call for the newcomers. I mean, I think Oregon obviously has a terrific offense, but I don't know if they've faced a defense like Ohio State in quite a while, Tom Castleman. This Ohio State defense is absolutely terrific. They've only allowed 34 points on the season, which is less than a touchdown per game for Ohio State. Meanwhile, Oregon's defense has given up 85 points, more than double. So I think that to me is kind of the big difference. I mean, they're a little bit different on offense. Oregon's more of a passing team. Ohio State's a little bit more of a running team. Like you mentioned, those talented running backs. TreVeyon Henderson, by the way, that guy he's amazing. Dylan Gabriel has proven to be turnover prone. Had a recent pick six, has a few interceptions this season. He's a really good quarterback, but I think he's prone to mistakes, and I think the Ohio State defense is going to force a big Dylan Gabriel mistake at some point in this game. I think Ohio State's going to be more powerful at the line of scrimmage with that running game. I think Ohio State, simply put, has more balance on both sides of the ball. I mean, that defense for Ohio State has been nearly perfect. So I don't think they're fazed by the road game. Maybe they are. There's a stat that I saw. Teams that travel 2 time zones over in the new conference shakeups are 1-8. So that one certainly bodes well for Oregon. College football is wild. I told you off air, my picks have been phenomenal with the NFL this season. My college football, there's a lot more variance. This season is very interesting because I'm going to be honest with you, Tom. Most seasons, there's a team that clearly stands out as the best team in college football. I don't think we have that team this year. I think Georgia and Bama have looked very shaky. Oregon has even looked shaky in some of these games. Like, remember, they barely beat some teams earlier this season. They were like preseason 3 or 4, and they slipped all the way down to 9. Now they're back at 3, and that's an Oregon team that almost lost to Boise State. I know they have that Heisman running back that's really good. Texas might be the one team, but it's been a while since Texas has been this good back-to-back seasons. So I got to see more from Texas. That might be the one team, but usually there's 3 or 4 really strong teams. I think part of this is, the way college football is now. It's different. I mean, we're changing teams. It's hard to get that camaraderie. It's hard to get that consistency. Players are going, and not players, we're going kids, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. They're going to a new team, a new system. They're having to adjust to new coaches, new everything. It is very hard to be consistent as a college kid. It was already more variance in college than pro sports to begin with. This is, the number 2 and number 3 matchup in the country. I'm not saying I'm not pumped for this game because I want to watch it, but relative to a number 2 and number 3 game, I don't think these teams are typically as good as most of the number 2 and number 3 teams we've had in recent memory, Tom. I mean, I really don't personally, but I definitely want to find out which one of these teams is closer to that elite level team. Ohio State's a very interesting case because Ohio State used to be a team that would beat Michigan in the big games. They beat Bama in the playoff when it first started. In recent years, not always, but for the most part in recent years, in these big showdowns of elite teams, Ohio State's been on the short end. And that's a big thing for Ryan Day. Think about all the games Ryan Day has won as the Ohio State football coach. I'm not saying his seat is super hot, but it's lukewarm. His seat is a little it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, Tom. Right. But the same ramblings we see with Harbaugh at Michigan, he couldn't beat Ohio State. All of a sudden, Ryan Day can't win a big bowl game. He can't beat Michigan. He can't get his team to the playoff. That seat's starting to get a little lukewarm. I think this game is the game that Ryan Day silenced some critics, just like Harbaugh did. It takes a little bit of time as a new coach on a new team to win those tough games. I think this is a big day for Ryan Day. Give me the Buckeyes on the road. They win and they cover because they are considerably better on the defensive side of the ball. Wake-up call for Oregon playing a great Big Ten defensive team.
Yeah, this is one where take the stats and these numbers with a little bit of a grain of salt. I mean, Ohio State's only had one game in which they've relinquished more than 2 scores. In terms of, that game against Marshall giving up 14. I know Michigan State and Iowa aren't really the creme de la creme of the Big Ten, but they're still Power 5 schools, and each of them scored all of
Iowa's offense has looked a little bit better this year. Not Iowa's great, but a little bit better.
But Iowa, also known for their defense, gave up 35 points to the Buckeyes, and I think that's really where it's going to come through. I know the defense is going to be strong for Ohio State, but I think that their running game is going to be multiple. They're just going to be able to wear down the Oregon Ducks. Like I said, the closest margin or the shortest margin of victory that the Ducks have had this season was that 3-point win against Boise State, hosting Ashton Jeanty, who's going to be a Heisman finalist if
He
there's
should
any
win.
sort of justice in the college football game these days. And so take two guys that are on a similar level as Jeanty and have them running all game over these Ducks. I think that this is going to be a little bit of that smash mouth welcome to the Big Ten,
Yep.
narrative thing. Even though, with Will Howard at quarterback, the passing's been pretty good for Ohio State as well. This is a game that I think is definitely higher stakes for Ohio State than Oregon, simply because looking at the rest of Oregon's scheduled, you've got some fringe top 25 teams with Illinois and on the road in Michigan, but the rest of the season you're facing pretty much an unranked Big Ten schedule, including closing out the season at home against Washington, a very, very familiar opponent for them. So I think that Oregon can afford to lose this game and still probably have a very good shot of having just a one-loss season. So they're, for the playoff perspective, they're still going to be in. For the Buckeyes, they face a slightly more daunting task the rest of the way. Of course, they've got the Oregon on the road. Then they have Penn State on the road. Penn State
Number 4 in the country.
Fourth in the country. And then, I mean, Indiana at 18, undefeated on the season, 6-0, 3-0 in the Big Ten, and that same Michigan team that's, of course, going to be at home for Ohio State. So it feels like they have a little bit of a tougher schedule ahead. If they happen to lose to Oregon, Penn State has been playing really, really well this year. I'd pick Ohio State over Penn State, but Penn State's at least within the realm of possibly
Perfect
beating this Ohio
example
State team.
of how college football is lacking elite teams. Penn State, not really a lot of firepower, 4th in the country. Crazy. Bama, by the way, just took a 1-point lead on South Carolina in the 4th. Bama continues to struggle. They're number 7 in the country. We saw our Mizzou Tigers, who are about to win 45-3, but they were 9th in the country according to rankings. Got hammered last week at A&M. So it's just college. The elite college football teams are not there this year, Tom Castleman.
I think
which is going to make that 12-team playoff a lot of fun. I'll tell you that.
I still think it's going to be pretty much the usual suspects around the top 5 or 6 spots that end the season are going to be in there.
We'll see.
I think most likely it's still going to be between Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Oregon. I think it's going to be like those.
There will be one team somewhere in there that's going to throw a little wrench in your plans.
Ole Miss. Ole Miss is going to be in there. Book it. So that'll wrap it for our college football talk. Now we'll slide over to baseball, where we are going to touch on most games are decided, or most teams are decided. The Yankees are on one side of the bracket in the American League. We are going to have some big, big money spenders, the Mets and the Dodgers. And then if you want to throw the Yankees in there, all 3 teams with payrolls north of $300 million. So this is a year where pay to play works out just fine for these teams. The small ball not necessarily winning out in this postseason. And I mean, it's hard to draw any sort of larger conclusions because the baseball postseason at this point, they've traded quality baseball, like actual baseball postseason, for TV money and small sample sizes. As we had a 3-game wild card series, a 5-game divisional series. Now we're moving into a little less variance over the course of having to win 4 out of 7 games for to win the pennant, and then of course the World Series will be a 7-game series as well. So, Common, preseason, you and I both had Dodgers over Yankees, I believe. And let's see, I know I have mine on here somewhere. Yeah, Dodgers.
The Phillies, I thought.
I did for the postseason. I thought the Phillies were definitely a better team than the Mets, but again, the better team doesn't necessarily win. I thought the Phillies were built for postseason play. The Mets went out and took a pretty convincing 3-1 series win there against Philadelphia. So this might be one where, our initial instincts, it's very rare that the best teams in baseball, in this case the Dodgers and the Yankees, actually meet up, let alone win the World Series. This feels like this could very well be a season where we're on track to see the 2 best teams actually playing for this tournament championship.
Yeah, I mean, I picked it. I don't see why I should falter from it or change my mind. I mean, it used to happen a lot more. Like I told you, when we were kids, late 90s, early 2000s, the Yankees were the best regular season team and the Yankees were the best postseason team. Maybe get rid of the 3-game wild card. Maybe let's have a 5-game wild card and do it where no one gets any rest. There's no, anything like that, because I think that's what hurts all these teams, the rhythm. You have to miss a few days of playing. These top teams miss the rhythm. Heck, maybe you want to talk about reaching for money, just make them all 7-game series. The NBA does it. Why not? NHL does it.
But you have to change the format, though, because there's
Sure.
the teams that have the bye week, because 1 and 2 get the bye. So you'd have to either expand the baseball postseason,
boot
include
one
2
or
more
add
teams.
one, whatever you want to do. You
They
either add one or you boot one
had
in
it
each
right.
division.
They had it right
So,
before.
Go
but
back to the old system. Do whatever you need to do. But
the old
I
system's
think
not profitable. Yeah.
I think it is if you add more games, Tom. If you make it a 7-game series, how is it not profitable? You have more games on TV.
Baseball's clearly moved to. They'd rather have more markets involved than more games with fewer teams. That's how it's going.
Okay,
More,
well, what is
more
it? Is it
eyeballs
7
on more
playoff teams right now?
6.
6 playoff teams.
Yeah.
You want
on
more?
each
Add
side.
2 more. Make it like the NBA. Have 8 teams in there. Make it a 7-game series. Do the exact same thing as the NBA. More teams, more markets, more games. But at the same time, those 1 seeds don't get punished. You get the 1 seed. You play the 8 seed. Best of 7. There's your solution there, Tom. But with that said, let's talk about the teams that are here. That was, by the way, my feeling about the Yankees and Dodgers preseason. We've seen a lot of these upsets in recent memory. I believe it was the Dodgers in the COVID year, and I think the Cubs in 2016. In the last, I believe, 10 years, the only 2 teams that had the best regular season record that went on to win the whole thing. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's the statistic. I think the Dodgers in the COVID year with the less games than the Cubs in 2016. But the Dodgers, I think, are going to be the one this year. Dodgers will get this done. I think, it's crazy. They're down 2-1. Yamamoto, who, by the way, really struggled his first postseason start. And, for what I was expecting, what the Dodgers were expecting, a little bit underwhelming this year compared to the high expectations. But he was worth it for that 1 game alone. That game 5 against the Padres, where he did not allow a single run. Their team as a whole went the last 24 innings without allowing a run.
Mm-hmm.
We know about the Dodgers lineup. The Dodgers lineup is the best in baseball, one of the best in the history of the sport. I mean, you got 3 MVPs, Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman in that lineup, which is just ridiculous. I mean, like Teoscar Hernandez is a terrific baseball hitter as well. I mean, up and down that lineup, you just can't go wrong with the Dodgers. The one, I don't even want to call it a question mark because I thought they would figure it out, but the one outside question mark is, will they have enough pitching? Well, it looks like their pitching has figured it out at the right time. So the law of averages, all these years with all these upsets, all these smaller market teams making runs. Well, the big dogs, like you said, the teams with the salary caps, the big name teams, the big markets, good for baseball to get these teams in there. I will be a lot more invested in the World Series. I got the Dodgers coming out of the NL American League right now. I believe it's 1-0 Tigers in the
all tied now.
1-1 actually now. Bottom of the 5th, bases loaded, 1 out, 1-1 Tigers and Guardians. So we'll see who emerges there. But regardless, Tom, I feel good in picking the Yankees to beat those teams. I actually have a stat, Tom. Aaron Judge is 2 for 13 in that Royals series. The Yankees won 3-1 in that series without really doing much of hitting. Their best player and probably the second best player in the world for baseball struggled mightily, and they won anyway. And I know he's actually struggled in the playoffs the last couple years. But again, law of averages. Aaron Judge has struggled in the playoffs. He's going to deliver. You better believe it. All rise, baby, for Aaron Judge. Garrett Cole, by the way, one of the best pitchers. We're talking about like top pitchers. I think we mentioned Kershaw, Scherzer, Verlander. Throw Garrett Cole right in there the last 10 years. This guy is an absolute ace. They brought Garrett Cole in for the postseason baseball. You saw what he did his last start. Nearly unhittable. So Yankees and Dodgers right now on fire with their rotations, on fire with the pitching. Already know the bats both teams have. I like Yankees and I like the Dodgers in the World Series. I like the Dodgers to win. Ohtani delivers an iconic performance in the World Series. Dodgers in 7. But if the Mets make it a Subway Series, obviously really good for the New York market. I think, for the nation as a whole, they probably prefer the Dodgers, but I could see people being excited enough about Yankees Mets. Not to mention Lindor, probably the second best player in the National League this year behind Ohtani.
Mm-hmm.
Pete Alonso, a superstar. So, we're going to have superpower out of the NL regardless. Dodgers a little bit more superpower, better overall team. Like you said, moves to a 7-game series. Dodgers have struggled in the 5-game series a little bit, but now they get into the 7-game series. Give me the Dodgers, give me the Yankees, and give me the Dodgers to beat the Yankees in 7 games in the World Series. It'll be probably since the 2016 World Series the Cubs were in, the most excited I'll be about a World Series in the last 10 years since that one.
Yeah, there's no need to really mess about with something that's worked all season long for these teams. There's been some ups and downs, but I'm right back with you, Dodgers and Yankees in this one. I think that the Dodgers have answered a lot of questions, particularly like you said with the pitching side of things. Absolutely lights out way to close out a series against the Padres. Now, of course, none of that really carries over to a matchup with the Mets. That's just kind of the variance of the Major League Baseball postseason, but. There are plenty of stars to go around. Like I said, there's really only one team that Major League Baseball kind of as a monolith might be rooting against in this case. I mean, there's been enough instances of the upstart team. I think this is one where baseball's saying, no, we want the prime, we want market one, we want market two. They have that already with the National League championship series with New York and LA, and they're hoping that it's going to be again New York and LA for the World Series. I think that will be the case, frankly. As we've seen, Royals had a really good season, ran out of steam against the Yankees, and I think we're going to see something similar with either the Guardians or the Tigers. These are teams where going from a 3 to a 5, now going to a 7-game series. This is where having talent is going to start mattering more and more and more as we increase the sample size here. So I'm right with you. I'm going Dodgers over Yankees in the World Series
Lane
as
Thomas,
well.
by the way, Tom, grand slam for the Guardians, up 5-1. So still plenty of ball left, but looking like Cleveland probably going to be in that ALCS, which is actually better matchup, better team than the Tigers overall. So we'll see a little better baseball for sure. So yeah, kind of weird.
Absolutely.
Tom Castleman and Kamenev in lockstep.
For this show, at least. I mean,
Weird.
one place where we should probably stop being in lockstep, though, is Locks of the Week. You and I missed on that Texans 2-point spread against the Colts earlier this season. Then we both went with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers plus 1.5, it was, I believe, against the Falcons.
We could have been
on
3-0,
Thursday Night Football.
Tom.
We could have been, but we decided, let's go in on the same one. You and I have not had any luck. We are 0-2 this season.
It worked
when
last
we
year.
when we work on. I mean, different. Nothing's carrying over here. So, like I said, that was the one where we both lost, but some good success for you. You had the Vikings -3 over the Jets in London. A nice hit on that one. Not a particular sweat on that one. And same thing
It
with the
was
Browns.
late, Tom. The Jets are driving for the game-winning touchdown. I had money on that game. It looked over early, but late it was a little bit of a sweat. But Vikings wire to wire covering that 3-point spread. Yes, sir.
And then you've got the Commanders. That one was definitely no sweat. Similarly,
Commanders -3, baby, 34-13.
There's the lightest bit of needing a fits with the Bears giving up that touchdown to the Panthers to start the game, and then it was just all Bears the rest of the way. Bears -4 over Carolina was a hit. And then Cowboys and Steelers.
I did ride with you, Tom, on off, other picks and wagers.
Yeah, no,
I did ride with that Bears -4. So we did kind of ride together, not necessarily in betting,
just not on the show.
But I followed your advice.
Yeah, and then if you did the same with the Cowboys and the Steelers, that was one where it hit the under fairly comfortably as well. Probably a little bit of help. Not that I knew that this was happening, of course, but a weather delay pushing that game back a little bit. So everything was really, really kind of slow, clunky to start. Not a whole lot of points early on in that game. Offenses came on later, but of course, not nearly in time for that over to be threatened. So on the season, we're doing pretty well for the
Pretty
most part.
good.
We are
Yeah.
winning as a show. So, Common, I'll go ahead and get started with my locks of the week. Dare I go 3 for 3 in going with the Bears? They are favored by a single point in London over the Jaguars. I mean, I think this is an area where strengths and weaknesses align pretty nicely for the Chicago Bears. Jacksonville gives up a pretty good amount of production on the passing game. The Bears seem to be figuring some things out. The Jacksonville
Caleb,
pass
baby.
defense not necessarily all that great, and the Bears may well, they. To be fair, this has been done against a couple of the worst run defenses in the league with the Rams and the Panthers over the past couple of weeks, but it seems that stylistically they may have kind of figured out a bit of a run game identity in terms of what do we do with DeAndre Swift? What do we do with Roschon Johnson? Perhaps Khalil Herbert, a more similar style to Roschon Johnson. They've kind of figured out, okay, what are we going to be able to block and be able to run to open up a little bit more of the pass game? And then, of course, on the defensive side of things, their pass defense has been absolutely phenomenal. They have a really, really good secondary. Jaquan Brisker, I don't think I've seen an update on him, but he's dealing with some concussion protocol issues. I don't think he's going to be playing, but even still, the Bears secondary is probably their deepest unit on the team. It is a very,
Jalen
very good
Thompson.
secondary. So I like the Bears just a single point over the Jacksonville Jaguars. I like the Bears to win the game, so I think a point's perfectly good here. I also like on Sunday Night Football, let's go prime time again. Bengals -3.5 over the Giants. Malik Neighbors is announced out for the game. He's the primary dynamic playmaker on that offense. I know that, Wan'Dale Robinson steps up as a good target for the Giants offense, but he's not an overly dynamic big play guy the way that Neighbors is. Possibly Devin Singletary out as well. Meanwhile, the Bengals have a really good pass game, and the Giants don't have a particularly strong secondary. So I think this is one where the Bengals, they've been putting up points every single week, and their defense, I believe, is one of, if not the worst scoring defenses in the NFL. I don't think the Giants are going to have enough firepower to take advantage of that. So that's why I'm going to go with the Bengals to not just win, but cover 3.5. And then fade the Panthers. I think that continues to be on. You want to talk about teams that have poor scoring defenses. I think I said Bengals were one of the worst. I think Panthers might actually be the worst, right over the Bengals there. Falcons have shown that they can play pretty well when they want to. This is a team that I said earlier. I've been saying this about the Falcons and the entire NFC South. This is a division where I still can't figure out who's actually good, who isn't, except for one team. We know the Panthers are not good. We've seen the Falcons play some close games against the Chiefs, come up with a win against the Buccaneers. I know it's on the road, but I think the Falcons fans are probably going to be traveling to Carolina for this one. I think there's going to be plenty Dirty Bird fans in the seats, giving the Falcons feeling a little bit like a home game on this one, -5.5 against the Panthers.
The Giants one was Bengals -3.5.
Yes.
Wow, I agree with all your picks, by the way, this week, Tom. I might have to ride with all of these. I am officially riding with one for the show. So let's see. What's the saying? Something's got to give. We're 0-2 riding together, but you're also
Oh no.
2-0 picking the Bears. So something's got to give here. Bears -1 over the Jaguars in London. By the way, because of the storm we've had and because they're playing in London back-to-back weeks, I'll give you a little Tom Castleman sort of outside factor conditions. The Jaguars landed in London on Friday. The Bears have
Were
been
there
in
on
London
Tuesday.
since Tuesday. As someone who has been in Europe, I believe, every other year for the last 6 years, I can confirm. I mean, jet lag is real, especially having to play a game at the highest level with the highest speed. There might be a little bit of jet lag for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Even if there was zero jet lag, this game on a neutral field, the -1 spread, it almost feels like the only reason why I'm nervous about this game is like, does Vegas know something? Because, Tom, the Jacksonville Jaguars right now are horrendous on defense, horrendous overall. The Bears have allowed just 85 points. The Jaguars have allowed 143 points. Let me say that again. 143 points 5 games in. The Jaguars defense this year, Tom, Can you guess how many interceptions they have?
I'm going to go with none.
Zero. Zero interceptions for the Jaguars defense. How do you beat the Bears? Well, you pressure the quarterback and you get sacks. I know they have an elite pass rusher, but as a team, they are tied for 24th in the league in sacks. They're not really pressuring the quarterback. They're not really forcing turnovers, which for a young quarterback in Caleb Williams that seems to get better and better each week, sets up to be a pretty good matchup for Mr. Caleb Williams. Look for a big game for the Bears. Again, they've scored more points and they've allowed less points than Jacksonville. Granted, with a soft schedule, Tom, but we have a 3-2 team against a 1-4 team that is going to arrive in London a few days later. The Bears should win outright. -1. I feel good about it. It feels like one of those games where the Bears will be in control. Maybe it's close-ish late, but I think Chicago wins definitely by 2 or more points. Bears -1 over the Jaguars. The one I feel the best about is the Lions -3 at the Cowboys. I talked about this game earlier. Dallas 23rd best against the run. The Lions are 7th at running the ball, which actually feels even a little bit low for how good they are. Gibbs and Montgomery, their duo was amazing. They're coming off a bye week where they're 11-3 against the spread off a bye week under Dan Campbell. Lions will dominate the line of scrimmage. Now, those 2 running backs will wear down a Cowboy defense that is 1, banged up, and 2, even when healthy, has struggled a lot to stop the run. Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, look for some play action to be set up with that run game. Look for a couple deep shots for the Lions offense. They are more explosive than Dallas. I don't even think Dallas can keep up in this game. I like the Lions by double digits in this game. For sure, -3, no doubt. And then actually the last one, Tom, I was between 2. And last time I was between 2, I switched and I lost. And had I gone with the other one, I would have won. So I'm not going to switch, but I was definitely on the same line as you on the Bengals. But we don't need to have 2 exact picks. So I will mix it up a little bit. I do think the Bengals, without Malik Neighbors, too much firepower for the Giants offense. But I'm going to pick the Commanders +6.5 at the Ravens. Also like the over 51.5 in this game. But again, I want to go with the gut. The first thought when I saw this line was that Washington will cover. I do have the Ravens winning outright, but 6.5 points is a lot for a 4-1 team that has won 4 straight. They're a team that's won by 3 or 4 touchdowns the last couple weeks. Close game going on the last possession. I think the Commanders cover 6.5 points. I'm only worried that it's a 7-point game because it feels like a one-score game. But I'll take the 6.5. Give me Washington.
If you'd like, I'm on Bovada right now. That's where I go to make these different picks. That is a 7-point spread. So if you want to take that half point, give yourself a shot at a push. You can take 7 if you like.
You know what? It actually moved on DraftKings too. Yeah. I should have checked the morning line. Let's do it. 7. Commanders +7 at the Ravens. I'll take the extra half point. Thank you, Tom. I don't think I'll need it. I think it's going to be a Justin Tucker field goal as time expires. The Ravens win the game by 3 is my prediction.
I think that this is a wonderful opportunity looking at your lines for you to have an 0-3 week, which I'm kind of sort of rooting for just because I think
3 ties.
Yeah, because you've got Bears are -1, Lions are -3, Commanders +7.
I could see it.
You've got a chance for a push there for the sheer novelty.
I love it.
I would cheer for an 0-3. For me, I've got the 1 push, but definitely could get taken on that half point either way. We'll move on to trivia and comment. I think I've got a really, really nice one for you. As you said, the Bears are going or are in London this week. There have been a lot of games in London. I think Jacksonville has played the most.
Back-to-back weeks.
Back-to-back weeks this season for the season for the Jaguars. But for the Bears, this is the most recent time, of course, that they are going to be in London. Can you tell me the first game that the Bears ever played in London? We'll go with if you can give me the year and the opponent. We'll go with that.
Was it the Jaguars?
It was not the Jaguars, no.
Tennessee?
I'll give you one hint. Jaguars did not exist at this point.
Oh, so this is like 90s or 80s. Okay. I don't do they man, I'm surprised they did London games back then. That was the thing. I'm gonna go with the NFL wanted to have some fun.
Hmm.
I'm gonna say Bears Packers in like 92 when Brett Favre was the quarterback.
Now let's go for the Bears being a little bit more relevant in the international zeitgeist.
Okay, 87, right after the Super Bowl team.
It'd be 86 right after the Super Bowl.
86
Yeah, the 86 season, and give me the opponent. It wasn't the Packers, but think big, think international,
Giants. Oh, Dallas
bigger.
Cowboys.
Dallas Cowboys. It was a preseason game. It was the
Oh,
inaugural American Bowl. This was I believe, the first game that the NFL actually played in London. You had the Bears coming off of their Super
Walter
Bowl
Payton,
shuffle
baby.
victory. You had the Cowboys, of course, America's team, even prior to the Jimmy Johnson, Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin era. This is when Tom Landry was still the head coach. The Dallas Cowboys, of
Ooh,
course, of fame from the '70s with their championships as well. So
Roger the
that
Dodger.
was the first. I believe I'm like reading through this ESPN article because they did this one a couple of years back. And you had Bridge Perry was there. You had all sorts of
Did the Bears win?
superstars. Let's see. It was a preseason game. Let's see if we got the score on here. The Bears went on to win 17-6
Okay,
in a
thrilling.
preseason game. So
I'm
I mean,
sure
I think
Richard Dent laid some guys out in that game.
that was, I think, like, if he even played, because it was preseason.
People
I
used to
mean, yeah,
play in the
yeah,
preseason.
like McMahon played, Peyton played. Yeah, so I'm sure that Dan definitely laid some guys out.
And
The,
that means rhythm and also keeps your
hmm
speed. I know we think about injuries, but we're seeing more injuries than ever, Tom. I actually was talking on my work show. I feel like every team should play their starters for 3 games in the first half, every
hmm
game. Get that rhythm, get that game speed, because it's the same thing we see in the NBA. The Clippers, the team that always rested guys, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, well, they always got hurt. I really think it's a fast game, and if your muscles aren't used to it, that's where injuries happen.
Yeah,
So
there's
I definitely think these NFL teams should start playing their starters every preseason game for a half. Now, I'm not saying you don't have to play the whole game, but I think a half is reasonable enough to get yourself in that regular season rhythm because teams like the Bengals, with their slow starts, that week 1 loss to the Patriots, that could cost them a playoff spot, Tom. Probably will cost them a
Yeah,
playoff
I,
spot.
I wonder, just bigger picture, if there will be some sort of inefficient market inefficiency found there by getting into quote unquote football shape, which is getting used to hitting and being hit. That's something that you also have to build up a little bit. Just really quickly, there's a fun little quote here from this article on ESPN where Mike Ditka, the Bears head coach, said Dallas brought the cheerleaders, but because they were all soccer fans, our kicker Kevin Butler was a hit. Butler, I believe, still the all-time scoring leader for the
There we
Chicago Bears.
go.
So I don't know, I just found that to be a fun little
Who
fact.
scored? Did Willie Gault get a touchdown in that game?
I don't have the box score pulled up or anything along
Bear
those lines,
legend.
but yeah, that was I just thought that was an interesting little tidbit. That was,
Sure.
it was a preseason game, but it was more an exhibition and like trying to get ready for the regular season. Like a lot of the players in this article are talking about how this kind of felt like a reward for winning the Super Bowl and being able to go overseas. So just a really neat, interesting thing, and kind of the opening, notes of the NFL trying to grow the game internationally, specifically across the pond.
Awesome. I love it. I have a trivia for you.
Go.
Who is the only receiver in the history of the National Football League that has 20 receiving touchdowns and 20 rushing touchdowns?
Devontae
Primarily a
Adams.
receiver. Who is it?
I jokingly I said Devontae Adams.
Oh, because I was dogging on him. Not Devontae Adams.
Let's see. I mean, he might be the Russell Westbrook of the NFL for you. Okay, so receiver, 20 receptions and 20 rushing touchdowns as well.
Yes.
Interesting. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Feel like it's somebody who had to be probably a little bit more gadgety, so to speak. I don't think it'd be somebody like Jerry Rice. And of course,
Definitely.
you said receiver, so not like an LaDainian Tomlinson, who was a running
No,
back,
and
of
I believe
course.
running
So,
backs have done it.
sure, yeah,
So
because
that's why I was very distinct in saying receiver by
receiver,
position.
receiver by position. It wouldn't be Chiefs receiver Dante Hall, would it? Because I know he
Not
was kind
Dante
of a
Hall.
returner, jack of all trades type of guy. Hmm.
Trying to think like I'll let you guess a few more times because there's a couple like I just thought of a clue that would give it away right away, and then I thought of another clue that would give it away right away. I will say, I mean, it makes sense. It would be, but the gadgety thought that you had is
Yeah,
definitely on the right track.
a receiver who also has rushing touchdowns. It's easy to go the other way. It's easy to think of like, the Marshall Falks, the
Yeah.
LaDainian Tomlinsons and all
No,
that, but trying to
receiver
find a
by
receiver who
position.
run. Okay, is this receiver in the Hall of Fame?
No.
Okay, so I'm gonna play a little bit of 20 questions here. So not in the Hall of Fame. Um, is this receiver an active player?
He is
Probably
an
would be.
active
Oh,
player.
really?
Active player, yes, sir. So this might give it to you, but active player, yes. Definitely active.
Oh, Cordero Patterson?
Not Cordero
Ooh.
Patterson. That's a good one, actually.
Yeah, and
It's
he
like,
he kind of
is he a
he kind of
receiver, kick returner, or a running back? I
he
know.
kind of
I,
pushes
I
that
think he
definition,
he
yeah.
technically like shifted to running back at later. And I'm gonna look up his numbers
Yeah.
just out of curiosity, but
Yeah, I
it's
think
not Cordero
technically he's
Patterson.
more of a runner than a receiver now. Ooh. I don't Does Debo Samuel have enough rushing touchdowns?
It's Debo Samuel.
Really?
And you want to hear
I
the
didn't know that
crazy
many.
part? You want to
Hmm.
hear the absolutely wild part about this?
That he has more rushing touchdowns than receiving touchdowns?
He's got identical both. He's got 20 and
Oh,
20, and he got his 20th receiving touchdown a couple days ago on
wow.
Thursday Night Football because he had like 9 rushing touchdowns a couple years ago.
Yeah,
So
I would say
Debo actually,
he's not even really gadgety, I would say. Like he's just like good football player all
he's
around. Like when I
awesome.
think gadget, I think of like a Tavon Austin. I think of, perhaps like Malachi Corley. I think of like guys who are kind of on the
Yeah,
smaller
but
side of
they
things and you
they
can use
run
them in
a
a lot
lot
of
of like
different
runs
ways.
with them though.
Yeah.
Just for good measure on Cordero Patterson. I'm looking up his numbers right now, Tom. He's got 22 rushing touchdowns, but only 16 receiving touchdowns.
That
So
also
he's
makes
actually
sense.
close, but I don't know if he'll get there. We'll see. Maybe
Yeah, like he
Cordero
needs a
Patterson.
screen pass or two to be able to do that.
Right?
So for statement of the week, I mean, this isn't really like a predictive thing or anything like that, but the statement of the week is that we are on the verge of witnessing history and perhaps some sort of, medical marvel in the NBA.
Oh,
Alonzo Ball injured his knee more than 1,000 days ago, several seasons back. Injured his
it's
knee and
almost 3 years.
has been out the entire time. Has had multiple surgeries on his knee, three, I believe it is. And basically, the most recent one was a cartilage replacement, which I'm pulling up the article here, where doctors grow cartilage outside the body and put it into the knee. So this is an article of NBC Sports I'm reading off of Yahoo, which um, this has been an operation for which no player has ever returned to play in the NBA after the surgery. The surgery has been done on NBA players in the past, but up to this point has always been a quality of life operation. Basically, if you want to be able to go shoot hoops with your kid in the alley, so to speak, in the backyard, you want to be able to walk fairly regularly, do some light jogging or something like that, but not to the level where you're going to need to be cutting back and forth at a really, really kind of intense pace, an intense angle, a lot of stress and strain. This is going to be something where it's going to be interesting to see when he returns to the court what he looks like. He's been going through full contact 5-on-5 scrimmages in training camp and preseason so far. So it's not definitive yet that he is returning to the court. I think this might be something where they're just kind of like working out to see, okay, what can he actually be capable of doing? Um, but this is certainly something like I've said, like it's a statement sheerly from the standpoint of we've never seen this, and frankly, I personally didn't think we would be seeing this. I think that this is something where it's obviously been a long road for Lonzo Ball. Injured his first season of the contract. Now, of course, he's coming up on the last season of his contract with Chicago, and it's been a long couple of few years for him where, for large stretches, he didn't know if he was going to play again. Doctors didn't know if he was going to play again. Nobody had any clue. It was just, well, let's try this because what we've done to this point hasn't worked. We've done all the normal, usual stuff. Let's try something that's a little bit unusual. I, for one, thought that he was going to be done as an NBA player simply from the standpoint of there's just a limit to what we can do. We might be seeing a new limit in the medical sports science arena, which I think is going to be really, really cool. And should he make it back to the court this season, should he complete the journey, I think that's going to be one of the big stories that, in the ultimate scheme of things, might be a little bit unheralded over the course of who's MVP, who wins a championship, what have you. This is definitely going to be one of the big stories of the season. Should he make it back?
Yeah. Hold on. You got me now, Tom?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Mike it's been getting disconnected a couple times. It hasn't been going in and out though for you, has it?
No, I've been able to hear you. It's either been your actual mic or your computer mic picks it up just fine.
Okay. Anyway, so I couldn't agree more. Lonzo Ball, really, really bad injury. I think a lot of Bulls fans, including myself, kind of assumed he was done. So the fact that there's any chance of him, any semblance of him even, playing remotely at all, and, any chance of him playing successfully again, awesome to see. So I'm not a medical expert, Tom. I defer that to the medical professionals, but like you said, sounds like this could be a pretty special thing that could happen here. So I didn't have anything crazy for statement. I'll kind of have a two-parter. Normally, me, I have some sort of bold statement, something crazy. But I think it's more of a common sense one, but I think baseball really needs the Yankees and Dodgers, and I think baseball is going to get what it needs. I think, we've had all these upset teams, the D-backs last year, the Rangers, some of these smaller market teams. I think it's going to be good for the game of baseball to have some of the biggest superstars on the biggest stage, Shohei Ohtani versus Aaron Judge. So really, really hoping we see that, and really curious to see like how baseball kind of hypes that up. Do they do a good enough job of selling this if it does in fact happen? Which I know baseball notorious for not really giving as much love to their superstars. I think the NBA does a great job of marketing their stars. I think the NFL does a great job of marketing their stars. The MLB guys, and part of it is personality. I know Ohtani, isn't necessarily a guy that, I know he does speak English, but he doesn't really speak it much. Still does interviews with the translator. Aaron Judge, he's an incredible player, but you don't really see tons of, comments from him. So I want to see if they kind of go to those guys more, try to do more of those feature stories, try to get more out of those guys. But, the two-part statement is the one that I kind of discovered during the show. I think baseball should just go to a 7-game series. How do we get these guys in these games? How do we limit all these upsets? The solution is we either go less playoff teams or more, whether that's 4 playoff teams from each place, from each, and then we eliminate the, division winners, just go off records, or do we just do 8 playoff teams on each side? I get that baseball is all about having a really good team get in there, but the really good teams are suffering. Maybe in a 7-game series, you put the really good team against an 8 seed. That gives them that advantage that they quite frankly deserve. So I kind of would love to see them go to that 7-game playoff system in baseball. That's my statement. It'd be good for the game, and it would eliminate those upsets because this isn't March Madness. Like, March Madness, you want to cheer for the Cinderella. But if you have to even watch a 5-game series or a 3-game series, especially a championship series, 7 games, you really want to see the best people. And baseball is not like basketball. The best
Mhm.
player in baseball, 4 or 5 plate appearances. Basketball has so many megastars right now that there's at least half the teams in the NBA have a megastar. So even if we see an upset, like where the Timberwolves upset the Nuggets in the Western Conference playoffs, you still had Anthony Edwards in the next round, and you still had Luka Doncic, and you still had Luka in the finals. You had Tatum in the finals, Brown in the finals. NBA is not lacking for star power.
Mhm.
They're going to have massive stars no matter what upsets happen, and they're going to have those stars touching the ball many times throughout the game. You'll have many chances to see Luka, Giannis, Curry, LeBron, Tatum, Embiid, whoever it may be. Many chances to see those guys excel at the highest level. Baseball, you don't see the superstars, in the game as much. So definitely want to, maximize the chances to put them in those series. So let's give them 7-game series, Tom, so we can see the
Yeah,
best players play on the biggest stage. Eliminate more of those upsets in those early rounds.
yeah, this is where baseball has kind of lost their way a little bit in trying to be something that they never really were intended to be. Their regular season is the truest determination of the best teams in the sport, because of sample size, because of the duration, because it's 6 months, 162 games. I think that, they went and decided, hey, we want to chase the postseason dollars. We want that TV money, the national money coming in, when really baseball just could do that during the regular season as well. They could lift a lot of the blackout restrictions that they have. It's a little bit archaic from a time in the past where everything wasn't as accessible. And so instead of growing with the accessibility that technology provides, baseball decided to kind of hem in on it and impinge their sport to really flourish in a way that we've seen NBA take off, the NFL take off. Baseball has decided that they want to kind of stay a little bit regressive in that regard. I think, they had a good playoff season before. Like the importance of the regular season is that you win your division, and then for the one team that was really, really good, the best team that did not win their division, they deserve that last playoff spot. I think that they had a very, very nice system in place, but like I said, there wasn't enough money in it, a baseball determined, which is why they made that switch. If they wanted to
Yeah,
chase the postseason
the
dollars.
owners still had enough money, Tom. Maybe not as much as the NFL, but they had still plenty of money.
Well, the answer clearly is not enough. I guess is what I would get with that. And
People
and so
want more. We
there's
want
another
more.
there's another crossroads that would actually fit your solution pretty easily. But this is again where baseball isn't really going to be a great forward thinker on this front. You want more teams in longer postseasons, you're going to have to shorten up the regular season. It's already a little bit tough with games being cold and wet and rainy late March, early April. And then, of course, the season goes until the last week of September. I think that
The
you have to
only
shorten it
the
from
only thing I
162.
would say, Tom, that I don't like about that, because I'm a
Mhm.
purist in stats.
I
I think it
know
would
that's
hurt
and
the
that's the
history
thing.
of stats. Because I
Yes.
think the NFL actually, if you want to do something, Tom, to shorten anything, shorten the spring training. A lot of the best people don't play in the spring training. Do what the NFL has done. NFL has taken out one preseason game, added more
Well,
regular
but
season games, and it's not like it's super taxing on a baseball body. It's not like you're getting as many hits as the NFL. It's not like you're running as much as, basketball or soccer.
but then
So I think you can add 7 more games for potential playoff teams and not really hurt anybody too much. So I wouldn't get rid of the 162. I would just do the 7-game playoff series for everybody. Not that much because it's the same thing, quite frankly, Tom, is the NBA midseason tournament. I would say what you have to do, Tom, is they do this in the MLS because they do this in, a lot of leagues in Europe for soccer. Some sort of award for the regular season. I know it's going to be
Mhm.
treated the same as the NBA midseason tournament. Not a lot of people care the Lakers win the NBA midseason, but I think over time, as we go down the road for, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, this will grow a little bit. It's called in the MLS the Supporters Shield. Inter Miami and Messi won the Supporters Shield. MLS Cup is still the biggest trophy, but the second biggest trophy is the Supporters Shield, which goes to the team that won the regular season title. Maybe add in a shiny trophy and just a little bit of minor compensation for the team that did win it. You add in a little bit of investment. You get to put up that trophy in your clubhouse. You get to get recognized as the regular season champ. Maybe your team makes a little bit more money if you get that. Give a regular season champion the World Series champion.
I think that would be outstanding. I absolutely would be here for that as well. It's that baseball used to have it where it's just the best team in each
the pennants,
league
right? Played in the World Series.
Yeah, it was literally there was no playoff. It was the best team in each league or each league meets up for the postseason for the World Series.
For the World Series.
And they just kept building it out and out and out with the postseason. They're caught between a rock and a hard place, and it's of their own doing where they don't want to lose the 162 because, like you said, record statistics, baseball's probably the sport more than any other that cares about that stuff that really has a foundation built.
And I will say history. It's the one thing about baseball that I still really love. I love baseball. I watch any sports. I'm watching the postseason now, but you know me. I've told you when I was a kid, if I had to pick, baseball was our number one sport. Now I like football better. I like basketball better. I like soccer better. I even like tennis better. It's not that I don't care, but I'm busy, Tom. And the priority of watching baseball games is not what it used to be for me. I'll turn on the postseason. I'll watch it. I'll watch some big games. But for the most part, I used to sit down and try to watch every Cubs and White Sox game. And I just don't have that same interest level anymore. I think baseball needs to do something
really
for
quickly.
Sure.
Really quickly on the whole statistics thing, though.
And I was going to say, that's the one thing, Tom, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that I still love about baseball with all my heart, the stats. Yeah. And if that goes away, you might push me out the door completely.
Well, but here's the thing. Hasn't baseball, and this might be a larger conversation for another show, but hasn't baseball already done that? I mean, how many pitchers do we look at and we say, oh, these guys are definitely or can be on pace to win 300 games in a career or something along those lines? How many hitters these days can we look at their careers and say, oh, 3,000 hits is going to be on the horizon for them? I mean, bullpens are more prevalent. Starting pitching has never been treated with softer, mittens than it has at any other point in baseball's history. We're seeing for hitting, it's home runs and strikeouts, but even for home runs, we don't see guys playing these big, long, arcing careers because contract control and making sure that players sit just long enough that there can be an extra year of contractual control. Baseball's kind of taken the statistic out of that anyway when we're talking about
the home run stat is still a big one.
Yeah, but how many guys? I mean, I haven't actually looked at this, but just off the top of my head, can we really say that
stolen bases are back?
Is Aaron Judge going to be a 500 home run hitter? Yeah. Is Ronald Acuna I mean, I haven't looked at the actual numbers. He could actually.
Aaron Judge will probably hit over 600. Tom, I think he was the least amount of games played to 300 or something. Aaron Judge.
But how old? What I'm saying is for me, I think some of that romanticism. We're not seeing these big arcing careers like Albert Pujols, Miguel Cabrera anymore, where these guys
to say that Ohtani and Judge won't do it though? Who's to say? We don't know. We don't, but I think that baseball's already kind of taken that out, and I don't think that shortening a season to 150 games, for example, is going to be a big enough of a thing. I think that seeing the 3,000 strikeout pitcher, the 3,000 hitter, the 500 home run hitter, I think a lot of those things are going to go by the wayside, and that doesn't take away from the greatness of the players, but guys are resting more than ever. The perspective. Why in baseball? I don't know, because baseball, you're not getting physically tired from playing the game. You're not running around too much.
I mean, as somebody who has a standing desk at work, standing out in a sunny field, I actually can be low key tiring. I think that's a bit underrated. But yeah, there is a thing about tiring. the grind of everyday baseball. I mean,
I know the travel is probably the worst thing.
Travel's pretty tough. Yeah, but
But
like there's a reason
I'll,
we don't see a lot of 162 guys. Like nobody's touching Ripken whether there's 162 games or 155 games in a season.
that's a shame. I
Like
will say,
that's
Tom,
my
I
standpoint on it.
somewhat get your stats, but not
Mhm.
entirely. I think the stats look different. I think the 500 home run stat definitely is not going anywhere anytime, soon. That's going to be something that a lot of guys can get, and it's going to be a milestone for a lot of guys. But we'll see. Like you said, could be another whole nother debate. But I definitely don't think they need to get rid of the games because 12 games. What is 12 games anyway? It's really 2 weeks.
Ooh.
Like what does it hurt anybody?
Did you
So
know, just really quickly, did you know Aaron Judge is 32 years old, Shohei Ohtani's 30 years old? I don't know, like just based on like how
David
age
Ortiz
curves
hit like
are.
40 home runs at age 40, Tom.
If we took, let's just say if Judge plays 8 more seasons, 300 divided by 8. Not to say that he couldn't hit 37 and a half on average over the span of that time,
He
but
hit like over
that's just to,
50.
that's just to get to 500. I don't
He
know.
can
What I'm
get to
saying is
500.
and it's not always his decision. Like we've seen with Mike Trout, it's not always your decision if you get to keep playing all these games. Sometimes your body makes a call that you don't have the ability to make. I'm just saying
All
we're
right.
already seeing the statistic kind of fall out of baseball from the record book standpoint. So
I think it's more the 300 game winner and 3,000 hits. Otherwise, the rest of those are there. We're seeing the
we'll
rise
see.
in steals, the 50-50, first
Oh,
time ever this
with
last
the help of
season.
a bigger bag,
We
yeah,
we
that
had the
will help.
40-70 last time. I
Yeah,
don't so much think that their statistics are gone. I think the statistics will look a little different, Tom.
sure.
But anyway, fantastic show as always. Always a pleasure doing this with you, Tom. Thank you so much for co-hosting with me. Thank you to all the listeners, the viewers, the people that take time out of the days to listen to these two buffoons talk sports. You guys are the best. Have a great one to all the listeners, and we'll see you soon.